Good morning and welcome to Perth Airport's Terminal 3 and Terminal 4 precinct, which is the exclusive home to all Qantas flights here in Perth and also Jetstar's domestic operations. This afternoon I'm flying up to Singapore on Qantas's daily Airbus A330-200 service, which takes about 5 hours or 3,900 kilometres to get to the lovely Lion City. Before we go any further, my name is Stephen. I really enjoy travelling around the world, producing flight reviews and some great destination content while I'm at it, such as walking tours and driving tours and all that sort of stuff. So if you have just discovered my channel or you're already an existing fan and you haven't already done so, really appreciate if you now like my content and also subscribe to my channel. Really just motivates me to produce better and better content for you guys, and I really appreciate your feedback as well. It's a very interesting setup here at Perth Airport Terminal 3, as Qantas's international flights do not operate from the main regular international Terminal 1 here in Perth. Instead they operate from their dedicated little international area of the domestic Terminal 3. Currently there's only 2 international flights operating a day here from Terminal 3 in Perth, this one being the daily flight to Singapore and the other being the flagship QF9 service to London, which takes a whopping 17 hours and 20 minutes from here in Perth, which is something I had the pleasure of taking back in 2019. That flight actually originates to and from Melbourne, so it does connect through Perth, and that flight to and from Melbourne is also technically an international flight. Anyway, let's head into the terminal now. It's now about 9 AM here in Perth, so practically departing from the domestic Qantas precinct. It's quite busy. The vast majority of travellers are not flying internationally, but they're flying over east, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and also around West Australia and elsewhere. Anyway, now that we're in the terminal, check-in for today's flight to Singapore. I don't appear to be able to check in at the self-service kiosk or bag drop. In fact, the night before when I checked in, the Qantas app wouldn't even issue me a boarding pass. This is a little bit intriguing because when I flew out here internationally in 2019 to London, I was able to use the self-service kiosk and even the bag drop, even despite flying all the way to London. Pretty sure why I had to go to a manual counter to check in and bag drop today was because Qantas staff wanted to ensure I had my Singapore arrival declaration and health declaration completed prior to arrival. So anyway, you could actually technically still do this on landing in Singapore, as long as you do it before you hit the immigration. For your information, immediately prior to the pandemic, Perth Airport, in line with the status as the 4th largest city in Australia, also had the 4th largest airport in Australia by passenger movements. Approximately 15 million yearly passenger movements, around 10 million were domestic and nearly 5 million were international. From Perth, you can fly to a huge range of destinations. It has a huge mining and resources sector, so there is literally dozens of daily flights to mine sites and other regional destinations within West Australia. Alternatively, you can fly to all the capital cities of Australia and many other popular regional tourist hotspots. Internationally, there's a fair amount of flights, especially to Southeast Asian destinations, although you can fly as far as Mauritius, London and New Zealand. There's also been seasonal services to Rome and previously, just recently, to Johannesburg in South Africa. So yeah, all in all, it's a pretty busy airport and it's set out over 4 terminals, which are located at opposite ends of the airfield. No big deal in the end happening to go to the manual counter. I guess Qantas had just been extra cautious, perhaps even just liking to remind customers of the very important requirement to complete this declaration before arriving in Singapore. Although if you were to arrive at the terminal a bit later, there could have been quite a queue, I would imagine. Anyway, now that we're checked in with passport and boarding pass in hand at a largely domestic looking Qantas terminal, it's time to go through security. In Perth, you can either go through Terminal 3 or Terminal 4 security. Basically, when you're flying internationally here from Terminal 3, you do have to go through domestic security first before going through a secondary international checkpoint later on, which is more advanced security with liquids, gels and aerosols, and of course you also got to clear customs at that point as well. I would definitely recommend clearing Terminal 3 security. A, it's closer to the international departures area once you are airside, and B, it's a lot quieter than the Terminal 4 where most of the Qantas wide body services over east operate. So yeah, definitely go through Terminal 3, but fear not, once you're airside you can easily move between Terminal 3 and Terminal 4 and also through to the international departures gates. If you are flying internationally and you are scoping out some food and beverage options, it's definitely pays to probably stay in Terminal 3 and Terminal 4 domestic airside for a reasonable amount of time, because once you clear the international security and immigration, there really isn't much on the other side apart from a very, very small duty-free shop and convenience store, and also one restaurant and bar. Without further ado, we've now had a bit of a look around the domestic side of the airport. Unfortunately, I don't have any lounge accesses today. Unfortunately, the International Spy Lounge is in the main terminal, not here. Yeah, not. Without further ado, let's go to the international side of the terminal, check it out, and see what it's like for flying out internationally here in Perth. Staying on the domestic side will just give you a lot more opportunity in terms of variety for food and beverage outlets. And if you're just a regular Qantas Club or Qantas Gold member, you're going to want to visit the Qantas Club, which is obviously operated on the domestic side before you go through to international. If you are flying business class or have the appropriate status, the Qantas International Transit Lounge is supposedly open for the Singapore flights these days, but you're also more than welcome to check out the Qantas Domestic Business Lounge as well. Anyway, the International Departures Gate advertises that they don't open to 2 hours before the flights. Like I got there around 2.5 hours before the flight and it was already open. So going through immigration is super easy with just one flight. It's very, very quiet, especially 2.5 hours before. So I'm through in absolutely no time. Once I get airside, but the one cafe that is there isn't even open yet, but it did open a little bit later on. So yeah, the lesson learned here is unless you really got access to the transit lounge on the other side, you're better spending most of your time domestic airside and only really heading over to the international side until it's really necessary, as there's not a huge amount to do or see once you're over on the international side. There is a small outdoor sort of terrace which is quite nice, so that's quite nice, but yeah, apart from that it is fairly limited in what you can do on this airside. And here is our ride for this afternoon's leisurely 5-hour flight up to Singapore Changi Airport. It's a 20-plus-year-old Qantas Airbus A330-200, Victor Hotel Echo Bravo Charlie. It's first delivered new to Qantas from Toulouse in France in March 2003. Operated for several years under the City Flyer brand for Qantas. Then it moved over to Jetstar between 2006 to 2014, and ever since has been operating again for Qantas, mainly for coast-to-coast domestic flights and also some of the medium-haul flights to Asia. His other aircraft name, also known as Surface Paradise. Anyway, just had a look out to the outside observation deck, and QF10 has just arrived from London as well after its massive 16-hour trek from the UK. So yeah, that's pretty well landing just before we're about to board, and those passengers will either depart in Perth or transit on their way to Melbourne, and a few more passengers will join for the journey as well. Anyway, without further ado, departure's scheduled for 11:50am this afternoon, but it's barely just gone past 11 o'clock and they're already calling boarding. I presume Qantas crew are keen to get this flight boarded before the passengers disembark in QF10 from London. So anyway, let's head on the plane now, and once on board I'll tell you a bit about the seat features on the Airbus A330 and also the configuration, all that sort of stuff. Once on board the Airbus A330-200, you'll notice that the main economy class cabin comes in a 2-4-2 configuration, and the business class comes in a 1-2-1 configuration. When it comes to picking your seat or planning your flight, it pays to check the seat map, because there's actually two configurations of the A330-200 being operated by Qantas. And you also got to be careful, there is also the Airbus A330-300, which operates more international flights. Anyway, this particular variant of the A330-200 has 28 business class seats and 243 economy class seats in the configuration that I've already mentioned. Towards the rear of the plane, it does taper off the last 5 or 6 aisles. It does taper off to a 2-3-2 configuration. For this particular flight, I'm seated in row 53K, which is a right-hand window seat located towards the rear of the plane. For this international / domestic dual configured airplane, legroom's fairly standard. I think it comes in around 31 inch seat pitch. So yeah, it's not too bad, but it's certainly not the best either. Yeah, for most people it should be reasonably okay for the reasonably short 5-hour flight up to Singapore. For today's flight, Qantas, with their Airbus A330-200 aircrafts, they're a bit vague in describing the exact in-flight entertainment they have. They say basically you'll just either get an in-flight entertainment screen, or you'll get stream to your own device, or you'll get an iPad or something like that. For this particular aircraft, you do get an iPad that comes stowed in the seat pocket that you'll find when you board the aircraft. It's actually not a bad compromise. This iPad system has a cleverly designed holder in the seat back, so you just slot it in there. It's also got a USB cable connected to it as well, so it won't run out of juice mid-flight. And yeah, it comes in quite a sturdy case, so it's not going to get banged up or anything too easily, which is good. Yeah, so the system itself has a reasonably good range of in-flight entertainment options. I think it's pretty similar to what you would get in a physical in-flight entertainment screen. You get a headset provided as well. Not the greatest quality, but it will do being economy. Yeah, so yeah, I reckon it actually works pretty well. It's not a bad compromise at all, and if you don't want to watch in-flight entertainment, you can just keep it in the seat pocket and you don't even know it's there. One slight bummer about the iPads is that they do have to be stowed for taxi, takeoff and landing phases of the flight. So yeah, that does mean for about the first 15 minutes after takeoff and also during the landing phase they do have to be stowed. The other slight disappointing thing is you can't see any sort of in-flight moving map as well, which is also a little bit disappointing. For this particular flight as well, you could actually access the stream to your own device through the Qantas Entertainment app as well. So that's really handy if you had another device you preferred to watch it on. Fortunately, Qantas still haven't switched on in-flight Wi-Fi for their international flights yet, so that's a little bit of a shame, puts Qantas at a little bit of a competitive disadvantage compared to many of the other major international airlines. So that's just one slight, disappointment with Qantas here. But overall, their in-flight entertainment, it's a pretty solid offering. Anyway, without further ado, it's now very much time to taxi out to the runway. It's a short taxi out today to the main threshold. So yeah, what better time to sit back now, relax, enjoy our takeout out of Perth this afternoon. We'll take out further north. We'll track along the Swan River, so there should be some great views of Perth CBD before we track past the Swan River and head north up over the coast and well on our way to Singapore. Once in there, I'll then give my thoughts on the in-flight meal and service. So stick by for that. Now been about half an hour after takeoff, and the crew are now finally starting their main meal service for today's flight. I'm sitting towards the back of the plane, 53K. I deliberately choose seats usually towards the rear of the plane. I know you're taking a little bit of gamble because sometimes the seat pitch isn't as good at the back, or it takes longer to get off the flight. But often you can be rewarded with empty seats next to you. So it's a risk I like to take. But unfortunately on today's flight it is pretty well full flight, so it didn't really pay off. Never mind. So that does mean it will take quite a while for the meal service to reach my seat, but I'm in no real rush, so no problems there. On today's flight, there's no dedicated after departure drink service ahead of the main meal service. The crew basically just gets straight into the main meal service, and of course from there you also get your choice of drink as well. So on today's flight I opted for the braised beef with vegetables. Tasted reasonably okay, not the greatest sort of meal, the beef wasn't overly tender, but it was okay nonetheless. Appreciate it also came with a slice of garlic bread, which was quite tasty. You also, after that, you got a choice of drinks, soft drinks, orange juices, beer, wine, all that sort of stuff. Then after that, the crew came around with a tea and coffee service, and they also came around with ice creams and Tim Tams, so that was really nice. And then after that, the crew did several rounds offering sort of water and that sort of stuff, so that was much appreciated. The crew also more than happy to bring out more drinks whenever you requested them. They were more than happy to do that, so that was much appreciated. With the meal service now largely out of the way, we're flying over the Shark Bay region of West Australia. Absolutely spectacular part of West Australia, absolutely amazing coastlines, extremely rugged, and it's very well known for a lot of shipwrecks back, from the 1600s, around that time. So yeah, really impressive flight route. At this point in time it also got quite turbulent as well, but yeah, shortly after that it was more clear skies, and we leave the Australian coastline just west of the Exmouth Peninsula, which also was in the news only a few weeks ago as the best place on planet Earth to see the hybrid solar eclipse of April 2023. So that's a cool little fact for you. Now that we've left the Australian coastline behind, the rest of today's flight will take us in a northerly direction, continuing out through the Indian Ocean, passing just to the east of Christmas Island before we reach the southern reaches of Java in Indonesia. We'll then continue through Java, crossing not too far from Jakarta, and then up through the coast of Sumatra before we cross through Batam and Bintan Islands, before entering the Straits of Singapore down into Changi Airport. So what better time now to just sit back, relax and enjoy some of the lovely scenery as we fly out over the Indian Ocean, across over Indonesia, and then finally down into Singapore Changi Airport, which is an absolutely amazing descent as you come over through the very, very crowded shipping lanes of the Singapore Straits. So sit back, enjoy. Once we're on the ground, I'll finally give my final verdict and thoughts on this 5-hour flight up to Singapore with Qantas this afternoon. today's flight with Qantas on their Airbus A330 up to Singapore. Overall, I thought it was a really decent flight this afternoon. For the price I paid, I bought an economy class ticket with cash approximately 3 months in advance with special sale fare of $599 Australian dollars return, which worked out at only $298 each way. So for the price, I thought it was an absolute bargain, considering luggage allowance of 32 kilos was included, and it was fully inclusive of food and drinks on the plane. And as a Qantas frequent flyer member, I even also got complimentary seat selection. So had I, got a special $200 flight with Scoot, or a connection with AirAsia or something like that, might have got a flight for $200, but by the time I added all the inclusions like luggage and seat selection, it would have cost pretty well just as much. So yeah, really can't complain for the price. Really solid flight today. In terms of service, it wasn't the flashiest service, as you might expect on some of the other major international airlines. That I'm thinking, Qatar or Emirates or Singapore Airlines, ANA, that to the life. But nonetheless, the service was good. The crew were attentive to my requests, and it was an all-inclusive flight. It had good amenities, and the timing was really great as well. So if you're just heading up from Perth to Singapore and your final destination is Singapore, leaving at lunchtime, getting in at 5 o'clock, it's no early start, you don't get in late. It's a really good flight in my opinion, a good daytime flight. Anyway, we're arrived in Singapore now. It's good to see Singapore's largely back to normal after the COVID-19 pandemic now. Pretty well all entry restrictions have been lifted arriving into Singapore now, so there's no stay-at-home requirements, quarantine orders. You don't need any proof of vaccination or anything like that anymore. You do have to pre-fill Singapore health and arrival declaration prior to arriving in Singapore, or at least prior to entering the immigration queue, but that's really easy. Only takes 5 minutes to do online. You can only do it 3 days before you depart, and you do have to do it each time you enter Singapore. But the flip side of this is it essentially is your arrival card, and you don't actually have to do a paper one when you arrive. So you just have to give it to immigration if they ask on your arrival. But on today's flight, Australian citizen with Australian passport, you can use the e-gates. If you're using it for the first time, you do have to provide your fingerprints and biometrics, but that's all good. In a few moments, I'm through there, all very efficient, and then Customs did even ask to check the form in the end, but I assume they had all that information anyway. So very, very effective arrival into Singapore Changi today. Definitely looks like traffic's picked up here. Used to definitely be one of the busiest airports in the world, and definitely one of my favourites, if not favourite. Finally, one other great thing about landing at Terminal 1 here at Singapore Changi Airport is once you've cleared customs and immigration, basically you spill out right into the Singapore Changi Jewel shopping centre, which is really amazing. I will cover that a bit more on my return review back to Perth, but it's a really impressive shopping centre, and it has a really impressive indoor waterfall. And also once you do arrive there, you can just walk to this underground taxi rank where you can get a taxi very easily, or you can go on your way on a bus or on the MRT to wherever you're going. So it's all very, very efficient arriving into Singapore, all very, very easy, very much appreciated. Whether it's a short flight or a long flight, it's always appreciated, a very easy arrival process. So in conclusion, ending our flight review right here, right now, Our flight today to Singapore started back in Perth, West Australia at the Terminal 3 International Departures area. It's a very unusual setup here in Perth where they got only a couple international flights a day from the departure areas of domestic Terminal 3. It's a bit of an anchor-dated setup, to be honest, not the most user-friendly for someone heading overseas, especially if you're flying on the massive flight to London. Nonetheless, it got the job done. Once in the air, the Qantas service was really pretty satisfactory. For the price I paid, only $298 one way. It was an all-inclusive fare. I really can't complain. Flight timing was good. The arrival into Singapore Changi was super efficient and easy and carefree. And so yeah, overall it was a pretty good flight with Qantas today. Pity they don't fly from the main international airport in Perth, but nonetheless, can't complain for the price. It's a pretty decent flight. So yeah, I'd definitely give them an 8 out of 10, and it's well worth, giving them a try. See how they compare to Singapore Airlines. So yeah, if you do fly on the route often between Perth and Singapore, curious to know what you think in the comments below, whether you're more of a fan of Singapore Airlines or Qantas, or perhaps you prefer the lower cost option Scoot. So yeah, leave your comments in the section below. I'll be interested to see what you think there. But yeah, in the meantime, thank you very much for watching today's flight review. Appreciate all the patience, as I know it's been a month or two since I last posted one, but rest assured I've got plenty more in the pipeline now. So if you like the video, please like it, please subscribe and engage with the channel. Really appreciate your feedback, and yeah, it really motivates me to produce better and better content for you guys. In the meantime, you can also visit my website aussiejetsetter.com.au, where you'll see all the latest flight reviews, industry news, destination guides, frequent flyer hacks and more. Put links to my socials in the description below as well, so if you'd like to check out that, please do. But for next time, thank you very much for watching today's flight review up to Singapore. Hope you've enjoyed it, found something informative about it. But yeah, for now, safe travels and wherever that might take you.